stay tuned because for the next 60 minutes, Motorsports Unlimited is on the air. Hi, I'm Jerry Bryant, and these are the lovely ladies of motorsports. And all this hour, we're going to have 60 minutes of action-packed excitement. All kinds of exciting things will happen. And we got the famous Bill Wildt, and we got all kinds of other good stuff that's happening all this hour. Motorsports Unlimited, 60 minutes of non-stop action. So let's go to the studio right now.
Thanks, Jerry, and hi, everybody. Welcome to the studio headquarters of Chicagoland's most watched, most talked about Access television series. I'm Bill Wildt, and this is the, well, again, I'm not really sure of what this edition number is going to be. Editing this is proving to be an ordeal. In the last episode of Motorsports Unlimited, I explained I was going to air the material we shot Thanksgiving Day at The Rock in 2017. If you've been watching, you know we experienced an equipment failure while taping that day, although we didn't know it for more than a month. I really didn't want to air the material, but many requests forced me to reconsider and to put together what I could and air it despite the problems. In the last episode, we aired the first part. Today, we're going to air the remaining material. Again, my apologies to those whose interviews were either cut short or were not there at all. In the previous episode of Rock 2017, I retrieved a portion of the interview I did with the North Shore Corvette Club. These guys are regular participants at the Rock, and my heart sank when I saw how little of their interview I was able to retrieve. After the first portion of Rock 2017 was completed and aired, I went back into the footage and found another piece of the North Shore Corvette Club interview. I thought I'd start today's effort with that scrap of omitted footage, along with my apologies. Here it is. From?
Wheeling, Illinois.
And what car do you have here?
My 66 Corvette.
You better tell me the color and all that, or I won't pick the right picture to put over the interview.
It's yellow.
Okay, the yellow one right behind me.
Correct.
Okay, and you are?
My name is Larry Agrest.
And where are you from?
Glenview.
And what car do you have?
I have a C5 coupe.
Which one is it?
It's Le Mans Blue right in the back.
The Le Mans Blue directly behind us. And if you would lean forward, make it easy on an old man.
How are you, sir? Good to
Tell
see
me
you.
your name.
I'm Tommy T, and I came in a Z06 2017.
And where are you from?
Deerfield, Illinois.
And which color is your car?
Blue.
Now, how am I going to identify that from the other blue one?
Medium blue. Medium blue.
Medium blue. Okay. 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 If you would, please step forward here. I can't reach that far. And you are?
Hi, my name is Marshall Loeb. I'm from Buffalo Grove, and I have a 15 red C7, which is right over there behind us.
Right behind us over there. Okay, I'm going to step to the other side here. Let's see if we can keep everybody in the shot. And you are? That's all I have, guys. I know some is missing, but I don't know how much. Again, you have my apologies. Now, in part one of Rock 2017, we talked to Janine Lauschat, who is the person who took all the great still shots of the cars this year. Then it was Matt Psyche from the Chicagoland Toys for Tots motorcycle parade. Then Jack Hokenauer, Ken Becker, and Jeff James showing off their fine cars. Followed by part of the North Shore Corvette Club with fine examples of Corvettes of many generations. Then it was Andy Betka, a Rock regular with his 1992 Pontiac Trans Am. Of course, our annual visit to the Rock wouldn't be complete without the Chicagoland MG Club, and they were there in force with a wide range of classic MG sports cars. After that, we chatted with Pete and Sandy Bellendar, showing off their Corvette coupe along with Bill Greenwald and his racing Miata. Of course, we can't leave motorcycles out, and Cyril Friend was there with his classic BMW Boxer. Now, when we began last week's episode, or part one of Rock 2017, we began with a little history of why we gather at the Rock every Thanksgiving morning. We did not, however, talk much about the 1895 race that introduced the automobile to America. Our regular viewers know our own Janine Lauschat performed an excellent reading of Michael Dooling's children's book, available at most libraries, The Great Horseless Carriage Race. Yes, we could go through all of the material available at the Chicago Historical Society, and over the years, we have. But I can't imagine coverage of our annual gathering at the Rock without this wistful account of the actual 1895 race that began the American auto industry. Janine?
Great Horseless Carriage race was sponsored by the Chicago Times-Herald. The newspaper wanted to prove that the horseless carriage was a better mode of transportation than the horse and carriage. Many people were skeptical of this new and strange machine. They thought it was just a fad, and motors would never replace the horse. The race began at 8:55 a.m. and continued over the next 11 hours, covering 52 miles across the city of Chicago. Initially, 79 carriages entered the race, but because of snow and mechanical problems, only 6 made it to the starting line. Each carriage had a driver and an umpire. The umpire's job was to make sure the rules were followed. 2 of the carriages were electric and ran on batteries instead of gasoline. The Haas, Mueller, and O'Connor carriages used engines built in Germany by the Benz company. Only Frank Duryea's carriage was built completely in America. Macy's department store sponsored the O'Connor carriage in hopes of selling the vehicle in its store if it won. Each man in the race knew that the winner had a chance of mass producing and selling his horseless carriage to the public. November 28, 1895 was not a good day for a race. It had snowed 12 inches the previous day, leaving drifts of up to 2 feet deep. Despite the weather, 5 hand-built horseless carriages awaited the start of America's first automobile race. An hour later, a 6th carriage would join the race. And then they were off, one by one. At staggered starting times, the carriages putt-putted away, reaching the speed of 7 miles per hour. Within miles of the start, the snow proved too much for the gears of the De Laverne carriage, and it had to drop out of the race. Soon after that, the Electrobat and the Sturgis Electric simply ran out of electricity. That left the race up to just 3 drivers. In the lead carriage was quiet, determined Frank Duryea. Frank had spent endless hours in his garage working on his horseless carriage, a machine he liked to call his buggy-yacht. Frank had fine-tuned his engine to perfection. He knew every bolt, pin, screw, valve, gasket, and doohickey. Just a few minutes behind Duryea drove Jerry O'Connor. An excellent driver, Jerry was determined and experienced. He had driven before in races in France. Oscar Mueller was in 3rd place. Oscar had broken down on the way to the starting line and was an hour late. However, he was still the favorite to win because he had just beaten Duryea a month earlier in an exhibition race. Suddenly, Frank Duryea's carriage skidded into a snowdrift. At 7 miles per hour, neither he nor the umpire in his carriage, Mr. White, was hurt. However, the steering lever on the buggy-yacht was broken. It was a disaster. It looked as if Frank was out of the race. His only chance of getting back in the race was to fix the lever. But how? It took some time, but Frank found a blacksmith shop. Because the rules forbade anybody from helping a driver repair his vehicle, Frank had to borrow the blacksmith's tools. As Frank desperately worked, his mind was on O'Connor, who was surely taking the lead. It would be nearly an hour before the buggy-yacht was fixed. At last, Frank was back in the race, and 2 hours later he was still going strong when a man from the side of the road called out that he was only 20 minutes behind O'Connor. Frank figured he must have been driving faster than O'Connor if he had lost an hour at the blacksmith shop, but was now only 20 minutes back. Yahoo! Shouted Frank through his chattering teeth. Everyone was shouting, "Go, go, go!" The buggy-yacht was gaining fast. As Frank passed by, he tooted his horn. Honk, honk. Before long, Duryea and O'Connor were neck and neck. Both throttles were wide open. Putt, putt, putt. Each carriage sped along. The race continued down Chicago Avenue, and then around the next bend. The buggy yacht pulled ahead. Not too long after that, Jerry O'Connor started having trouble. A horse-drawn sleigh tried to cross the street in front of him, and they collided. The accident bent 4 spokes on his carriage, which left it unable to be steered. O'Connor noticed that he was right near the Clark Street trolley. With the aid of a few people from the crowd, he pushed his carriage onto the rails. He figured that if the rails could steer for him, he could get to the next relay station for repairs. "I'm not out of the race yet," he exclaimed. By late afternoon, Frank Duryea was way ahead, even though he made a wrong turn and was trying to get back on course. No one could stop him now, or so he thought. And then his engine started to smoke. He heard a loud kerplunk, and then another, and then a hiss, and then a patooey. Frank figured it must be the sparking device as his buggy yacht rocked and sputtered and coughed. Frantically, Frank ran through the snow-covered streets. He had to find a tinsmith shop where he could fix his sparking device. There was no time to lose. 55 minutes later, the buggy yacht was fixed. Frank was back in the race and back on course. Despite the delay, he still had a slight lead. O'Connor had fixed his spokes and was also back in the race. And Oscar Mueller, who had been quietly puffing and chugging along all day, was gaining fast. It was anybody's race to win. However, as night fell, O'Connor's luck finally ran out. He was cold, tired, and frustrated, and so was his carriage. He had broken down again, and his attempts to get his engine going in the cold, icy night were hopeless. Luck was not on the side of Oscar Mueller either. The freezing temperature had taken its toll, and he passed out in the carriage. Charles King, his umpire, pushed him to the side and continued driving. Maybe, just maybe, thought King, Duryea is not too far ahead. Miles ahead, Frank was closing in on the finish line. It was getting dark, and he was freezing. There was no sign of Mueller or O'Connor. Only a disaster could stop them now. Frank and Mr. White could barely contain their enthusiasm. "Yahoo!" Frank shouted, as the buggy yacht disappeared into the snowy night. At a little past 7 o'clock that night, Frank Duryea crossed the finish line. A small but jolly crowd gathered around and cheered. He was covered in dirt and totally exhausted. The buggy yacht looked tired too, all covered with slush. But Frank Duryea had done it. He had driven 52 miles in 10 hours and 23 minutes, while averaging just 7 miles per hour. "Yahoo!" shouted Frank. With the help of his brother Charles, Frank started America's first automobile company, the Duryea Motor Company, the following year, 1896. They built 13 identical horseless carriages by hand and sold them to the public. People were now beginning to see how the horseless carriage could benefit them. Within 3 years, there were more than 200 automobile companies. Soon people would be able to live in the country and drive to work in the city. The great horseless carriage race marked the beginning of the automobile era and the end of the horse and carriage days. The early pioneers revolutionized the way people lived and worked. America would never be the same.
I'm sure you can see why I use that piece year after year to tell the story of America's first auto race. Sure, it's a children's book, but it's accurate, and Janine did a great job with it. If you didn't know the story before, now you know why we gather every year Thanksgiving morning at the spot where America's first auto race started and finished Thanksgiving 1895. It's to tip our collective hats to those who started it all for all of us. Speaking of tipping our hats, let's get back to more of the footage I was able to salvage from our 2017 gathering at the Rock. Oh, I love it when we get towards the end and we still have a pretty girl to talk to. I'll walk right past the guys because I would much rather talk to a girl. And you are?
Dawn.
Dawn what?
Dawn Scully.
And where are you from, Dawn?
Chicago.
What kind of car did you bring down here today?
350R. Mustang 350R. Shelby.
Is it yours?
No.
I
it's
see
my
you
husband.
looking at. I see you looking at him, so I have to talk to him.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell the folks who you are.
Mike Scully from Chicago.
Okay, we're going to talk to you about your car in a minute, but first we've got another fellow here at the end, and you are.
Ted Flisk,
And where are you from, Ted?
Chicago.
And what did you bring down today?
I have my date night car, former date night car. My wife died in April, but
Oh, I'm so sorry.
it's a 04 CLK 500.
Okay, I'm sorry about your wife.
I-
Listen, I lost my wife in '96, and
Murder. My first Thanksgiving without her.
I will tell you something, my friend. It's been over 20 years. She died in 1996, and there still isn't an hour goes by I don't think about her. So it's,
I know what you mean.
I won't even. Yeah, it's terrible. You see how you guys get under our skin? It's just amazing.
I ruined the whole interview.
No, you didn't. No. Believe me, I'll tell you what. It'll probably help somebody else out there who's gone through it and thinks they're the only one. They're not the only one. Tell me about your car.
Well, it's a 17 Shelby GT 350R. It's the badass Shelby. Yeah.
Automatic or 4-speed?
Oh, they all come 6-speed.
Oh, 6-speed. I'm sorry.
They're all 6-speed manual. It's 5.2 liter flat plane crank, so it kind of sounds like unlike anything else on the street. Carbon fiber wheels, no back seat, and flat flies.
Your wife, no back seat?
No back seat.
That's okay with you?
That's fine, yes.
Okay. Usually women would think that's crazy.
Well, the roll cage is going in the springtime.
So you race it?
I'm going to see some track time with it, sure.
What kind of track? What are you looking to do?
I like to go up to Elkhart Lake or, someplace, that track in Michigan.
Groton.
Groton, yeah.
Go to Groton. Not that I don't like Elkhart Lake, but Elkhart Lake, we're talking about Road America, and Road America has 3 200-mile-an-hour straightaways. And boy, can you eat engines up there.
Well, this will top out about 170. I've only had it to about 140. It's tough to do that in traffic around here.
Yeah, well, Groton is a lot of fun. Well, Groton's a lot of fun because it's very three-dimensional. Up, down, right, left, off-camber turns and all that. Whereas Road America is beautiful, but boy, you better have money because you can go through some equipment up there. It's a huge place.
Yeah, tires aren't cheap,
Tires, engines, you'd be surprised what you can go through. Now, over here on the far end, the guy with the Mercedes sedan.
Yeah, convertible.
Convertible. Oh, is that one of those where the whole thing retracts?
No, it's a soft top.
Soft top? Okay. Why Mercedes? What were you looking for?
Dependability. I'm not a mechanic. I would have liked the hot rod, but if it broke down on date night, it'd ruin my night.
Okay, interesting question. You're exactly the kind of person I like to talk to. You're not a mechanic. You're not mechanical.
No.
Why the interest in cars?
Oh, I love cars.
Oh, I know.
I should have got one of these.
Well, I'm looking at the sparkle in your eye. You do love cars.
Yeah, I do. I had a '56 Chevy when I was a kid. I had a
Even though you're not mechanical.
Buick. Well, I didn't buy the '56 new, but I bought the GS 400, the Buick Grand Sport.
Sure.
I bought that new in '67, and I've been bouncing all along. I'm a little younger than you. I'll be 69 in February. And
Yeah, you're still a kid.
I always had something in the garage.
Well, I'll tell you something. It does.
My kids are mechanics.
It does. No, it does interest me though. Everybody that I knew when I was growing up, we were all gearheads and we all did engine swaps and we all, one guy was working on a 40 Ford Coupe and another guy's doing a T Roadster and another guy's doing a stock car, but we were all gearheads, we were all mechanical, and I assumed everybody in cars was mechanical, but it's not true.
Nope.
There's lots of people in cars. Do you know what I'm talking about?
You would see some people and you wouldn't even know they can't even change their own oil, let alone change a tire.
And yet they're into cars.
Sure.
It's amazing.
It's a lot of it is it's the the colors and the chrome and everything. People like that stuff. So
Okay, I don't get it because, like I say, I'm in love with automobiles and motorcycles and boats because I like mechanical things. The reason I like motorcycles is because all the insides is on the outside and you can see everything, and I like that.
well, you got the flashy boats out on the river and the
Sure.
lake. They look beautiful. All people know how to do is turn the key.
I guess, like I say, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I'm glad they're there. Now, can I put your wife to work for a moment?
Definitely.
Step right out here, please, in front of the rock, and I want you to look at the camera, and I want you to say,
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
I must admit, Ted caught me by surprise when he mentioned he'd just lost his wife. I suppose it's something most of us must face as we age, and it's never easy. It's a good thing Dawn was there to lighten the mood. Now, before I go any further, I want to take a moment to acknowledge Jay Trellenberg, and I hope I'm saying that right, Jay. Jay Trellenberg from the North Lake Walmart. He says he's the #1 fan of Motorsports Unlimited and has been for decades. Thank you, Jay. And thanks to your wife, who Jay says is also a fan. We certainly appreciate folks who take the time to let us know they enjoy our work. Now, let's get back to our 2017 footage and see what else I was able to save. Actually, that interview recorded normally. So I was thinking as I reviewed the material, perhaps the technical problems are behind me. On the other hand, I'm not at all happy about the way I'm moving, or more accurately, the way I'm not moving. You see, I was using this gathering at the Rock as a sort of test to learn my capability in the field. It's a relatively simple show to shoot because the equipment stays in one position for the entire show. I hadn't produced a program since the 2016 gathering at the Rock a year before. I was plenty embarrassed about that one and hoped I'd physically improved. But it was obvious I hadn't. I hadn't gotten any better. And it was obvious. By this time I was running on adrenaline, and I knew I didn't have much gas left in the tank, so to speak. I could see there were only a couple of guys left, so with the finish line in sight, I continued.
Gotcha.
We've got one more that came down here to join us at the Rock today, and you are.
Bob Strutek of Willow Springs, Illinois.
And is this your first time down here?
No, I've come here every year just about.
That shows you how good my memory is.
I don't appear on camera that much.
Well, you did this time. Are you a car enthusiast?
Yes.
Okay, what brings you down here then?
Just the rock and the history of it and all that. I do watch your show every week, and I'm interested in
You're the one.
motorsports. Yeah, well, I'm the one. No, I brought you a picture last year of Alex Denisenko.
Oh, okay, yes.
That was me.
What he's talking about, Alex Denisenko, is one of our dear friends that I knew for many, many years,
Right.
and I was shocked to find out that he had passed away. I hadn't seen him in some time. He moved to Indiana, I believe
Right.
it was, and built a new race car shop over there.
Yes.
And then I hadn't heard from him for a while and heard that he passed away, so
Yeah,
very sad.
He had a stroke, and it kind of disabled him
Sure.
somewhat. And I didn't see him as often. Nobody did after his stroke, and it limited his activities and his racing, and that's what really hurt him because he couldn't race anymore.
It hurts all of us, there's no question about it.
Yeah, he added a lot to the game of racing.
He was a car dealer and a purveyor of cars, but more than anything, he was a motorsport guy.
Correct, yeah, right. Quite a guy.
Well, thanks for coming down here. I'll tell you what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to look at our camera. I want you to tell the folks.
Happy Thanksgiving, folks.
I'm glad Bob reminded me about our old friend Alex Denisenko. It's strange the way our mind allows us to move on after suffering losses of this kind. I guess it's the way of things. Now, while I'm still standing, it's time to chat with regular Rock visitor Art, and I'm not even going to try the last name. And of course, a Thanksgiving morning at the Rock wouldn't be the same if we didn't have the man who calls himself Crazy Art, who I call Avanti Art. Tell the folks who you are.
Art Mishevich from Logan Square.
Say that last name 3 times fast.
Mishevich.
I knew you couldn't do it.
In the Army, it's Mike India Sierra India Echo Whiskey India Charlie Zulu.
Which Army?
United States Army.
Okay.
Is there any others?
Okay, I'm about frozen cold, so this interview won't be much, but Art always wants to come down and tell us about Avantis.
Yes, I want to tell you about Avantis. I've loved Avantis since I was a kid. When I first saw a magazine article in like Popular Mechanics or Popular Science, they talked about the Avanti with all its technical advantages, coming with a Paxton supercharger with a built-in roll bar, and it had a long nose and a short deck. It came out a couple years before the Ford Mustang and 5 years before the Camaro and Firebird. And it was a performance car, and it was Studebaker's like last stand of a beautiful fiberglass car with fantastic styling, a minimum of chrome from Raymond Loewy, the designer, and was a gorgeous car, and I fell in love with it before I even saw one.
And now you have one, and as a matter of fact, you had yours down to Blackwood here at the Rock some years ago when it was snowing.
Yes, I did. It was a daily driver of mine. I used to take it all the time. It isn't stock. It's had very many modifications to it, so it's not a classic to preserve, but it's one to show off. And if I was a better person working on it like I should be, I'd have it here today.
You better get out whatever you want to say because my back is about to give out. I'm almost done.
Okay. I just want to, once again, I want to promote the Avanti, Chicagoland Avanti Owners Association. I want to promote the Nash Metropolitan Club, which keeps the Nash Metropolitans the first, economy car for the United States. And I also want to promote like the Chicagoland Norton Motorcycle Club, which is, these are great clubs that really promote vehicles, which we need to keep these beauties. When you see them, they're so gorgeous, unlike new modern cars you see at dealerships all over. And I also want to present 2018 Avanti calendar to both Bill Wildt and Dan Schmidt for all their great work that they have been doing here, preserving Chicagoland motorsports for all these years.
Well, thank you so much, and I always depend on them for a new calendar every year because the Avanti calendar has big squares that I can write notes in it, and I do it all year long. Again, Art, I'm sorry, my back is giving out. I think I'm about done for the day. I'm sorry, folks, but I lasted longer than I thought I would. Yes, I was done, but our regular viewers know we traditionally end our annual visit to the Rock by chatting with my old friend Dan Schmidt. Dan and I have known each other for better than 40 years. We met in the late 60s racing amateur motorcycle races at Bob Joe's Sycamore Speedway in Sycamore, Illinois. This was the beginning of our flat track motorcycle racing careers that eventually turned professional, where we competed against each other throughout the early 70s. What's that? You don't know what flat track motorcycle racing is? Watch.
The speeds he hits are incredible. On the half-mile tracks, one of the races he rides, it's 100 miles an hour in the straights and 80 in the corners within inches of posts and guardrails. He rides within inches of other riders he literally has to trust with his life. Professional motorcycle racing is a violent world.
Flat track motorcycle racing. How many sports do you know where you personally know people that died in the sport? Well, Dan and I personally knew 3 people that died. I don't know about you, Dan.
Well, that many.
I was thinking about Mike Gilkey, and I was thinking about the kid in Ohio with the Ohio.
Mike Eskew and
Jay Ridgway.
And.
Yeah, I mean it's not something to brag about, but the point is, the sport is so incredibly dangerous because it's run at such high speeds that. To participate in an era when we would show up at a racetrack, say in Ohio, and there'd be 150 novices there, 75 juniors, and maybe 40 experts. This means the novices, to be a novice, first of all, you had to acquire enough points at an amateur track where they would give you a professional license. And after you get enough points at an amateur track and they give you a novice pro license, you had to earn enough points as a novice to become a junior. And then you had to earn enough points as a junior to become an expert. It was, I think, a very wise thing because the sport is so dangerous. You really do have to work your way up in the sport. And I can tell you this, I just wish the audience, I wish we were served by a communications medium that was available to all. I wish network television were available to all because then I wouldn't have to tell you about this every time because you'd know about it just like you know about the minor leagues in baseball and somebody becoming a AAA player and then becoming a major leaguer, and you would understand what all that meant. If you went to a motorcycle race, you would have no way of knowing. If you saw a dozen guys out there with white number plates with black letters on them with no letters after their name, you know you're seeing a group of national experts. These are the best in the world, and you know you were seeing something special. And then at a track like Santa Fe Speedway was a short track, and because it was a short track, they threw everybody together. Normally novices race novices, juniors race juniors, experts race experts at the big tracks. So it was very important. But at Santa Fe, they threw us all together. And every once in a while, you'd hear of a kid. I'm going to use the example. There were others of Stevie Elo. You know Elo? Yeah, Stevie Elo out of Michigan. The rules changed when Dan and I started racing. You had to be 18 to turn pro, and a couple of years after we started, they changed it to 16. And Stevie Elo was one of the first 16-year-olds from the amateur tracks in Michigan. And Michigan had a number of amateur tracks, and they produced some great riders. And we heard about this kid, Stevie Elo. Now I can tell you at Santa Fe Speedway, you never ever saw a novice number plate. Novice number plates were white plate with red numbers on them. You never saw a novice number plate in the main event. That's just impossible. You rarely ever saw an expert number with a letter after it. Almost always national numbers made it to the main event. And here you go to Santa, if you know the sport and you understand the sport and you go there and all of a sudden you see this white number plate with red letters and the rest of them are all white plates with black letters, you know that somehow a novice worked his way into the main. That was a big deal.
And he won.
That's the point is. The point is, it's only important if you know the sport. You'd have to know the sport. It would be like some kid out of high school joins the Cubs and hits the game-winning home run. It's a huge story, but you have to understand the sport to know that it's a story. And Dan and I participated in motorcycle racing at a time when today, if you go to a flat track races, and there are very few left, if you go to a flat track race, yeah, you're lucky if maybe there's 15 or 20 novices, and I don't even think they separate the juniors anymore.
You know, they changed all that, and I think it's to the detriment. I mean, if you ask the AMA, how do you get to be a single? They call them. They got the singles and they got the twins. Expert. You can just become a single. I mean,
they don't have
no.
And I can tell you why. Because there aren't enough riders.
There aren't enough riders.
There's just not enough riders. In our day, there were riders were plentiful, and it was making sure that the guys were good enough. Believe me, you didn't race at Santa Fe unless you were really good. Have I got that right?
Right. Well, there was a lot of local. I mean, like I say, at Santa Fe, I was never great. I mean, TT, when they had the TTs on Friday nights, I was competitive. But short track, looking at you right now, today, at 68 years old, I'm a better short track racer right now today than I was when I was 20.
I hope so. Anyhow, I'll tell you what, I'm going to bust this bubble.
Even the whole short track thing is a mentality that is, here's the bottom line in short track at Santa Fe Speedway. If you allowed one thought to enter your mind during that race,
you were getting past.
3 bikes just went by you.
Yeah.
There was no time for thinking. You were either on the gas or getting ready to get on the gas. There was no coasting. If you were coasting,
it was a knife fight. There's no question about it. It was a knife fight. Santa Fe was something special, and that's why we have such fond memories of it. And I've talked about this on previous programs, that what made it so special was the peculiar Wednesday night program. Well, who runs a program on Wednesday night? Nobody. Well, Santa Fe did
and they would get 3,000 to 4,000 spectators.
Which Dan thought was a big deal, which I thought was pathetic, because I know that you can't. Dan, let me ask you this. It's really hard, even in my own community, to get them to understand what I'm talking about. How much different would your career have been if every race you went to, they gave you $1,000 start money?
Well, it'd been much different. Right.
You could have devoted yourself to it.
Right.
Okay, but much different. Right. Well, in a normal world where people compete in the sports entertainment marketplace for normal money, every guy that shows up at the track is going to get $1,000 start money, and then he's going to compete for purses and all that stuff. Well, we were lucky at Santa Fe Speedway, and I did well at Santa Fe Speedway. I'm lucky if I came home with $16. It was that bad.
You might, but tires are only $16 then, so you could have made enough money to pay for a tire.
One rear tire. Anyway, the point is, it was a special time, and Dan and I were just lucky enough to race in that time. And I've often had people ask me, because I didn't race my first professional race until I was 30 years old. And people said, God, you really did well. Don't you think you could have done a lot better if you'd started younger and all that? And I said, no, you know what? I'm quite happy with what I achieved. And if I'd started, I might have gotten killed. So it's a dangerous sport.
Right.
Janine, does any of this make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, are you going to wear the hat the whole thing?
I guess I could take it off once in a while. It's a
hat
beautiful day.
No, it's cold. Everybody keeps saying that. It's cold.
No, I just came from North Carolina for 2.5 years. And this is a winter day in North Carolina. This I can take anytime.
Well, I'll tell you what, to me, if this is the way it is in North Carolina, I got to go further south, because this is too cold for me.
It may be my youthful age.
Yeah, that's right. You're just a baby. You're just a kid. Anyway, we always close up here at the end.
Let me,
yeah, go
bring
ahead.
this up. All right. So first of all, we had discussion the other day. So I'm giving you a copy of the Studebaker story because you doubted me, which you should never doubt me because I never speak unless I know exactly what I'm talking about.
Boy, is there a lot of evidence to the contrary, but go ahead.
There's no evidence. In fact, let me tell.
I know you've got alternative facts. I know.
I want to tell someone a story. I had someone one time say to me, "Well, come on, Dan, you got to BS once in a while if you race motorcycles." And I looked him in the eye and I said, "You know, every race I was in has been recorded. So there's no way you can lie. You can lie, but if someone wanted to check up on you, and I come from that era where there was honor. There's a certain thing that tell the truth is part of your upbringing and part of your honor. So no, I don't BS about racing. And on top of that, for the last 30 years, every race I have been in, we have recorded. So by doing the TV show, every race I've been in has been totally recorded because that is what my TV show is all about. So the more events I get to race, the more TV shows I get to do. And that's why I keep racing.
You were going to tell me about a Studebaker
So
thing.
anyhow, the Studebaker, I mentioned to you that when they went to the salt flats, that not only did they have engine that was supercharged, they also had an engine that had 2 4-barrel carbs on it. And they also brought in a couple women to help do the driving. Because not only did they go to the salt flats in '63 to set land speed records, straight line on the 10-mile course, where they did go 173 miles an hour or something like that, they also had a 10-mile oval they laid out on the salt flats. And they also had a 1-mile oval on the salt flats. So between these 2 gals and the 2 Granatelli brothers and Andy Granatelli himself, they set all kinds of records. So
wasn't that when they had more salt and so much of the salt has been taken up by commercialization or no?
The whole salt thing on Bonneville depends on the water level below the salt.
Yeah, but haven't they been?
Well, they've
been nibbling away at it.
Well, they have a salt production. I mean,
right.
Morton Salt is there, but it's so huge. I mean, I've been there. I've rode on the salt flats with my dirt bike, and it's almost like riding on ice. So the water level, and there's mud out there and that, but it's just that Studebaker paid to have the American Timing Association, whoever's in charge, to do all these other records. Like there was a record for a 6-cylinder car, and that record was held by Hudson. So the 2 gals got in a Lark with a 6-cylinder car, and they ran 100 miles, changing riders, or 500 miles or whether changing drivers, and they set new records with a 6-cylinder engine. So that's what I'm showing you here, and I'm going to give you a copy of this. It's got all the records, and this is an article by Hot Rod Magazine. So when I talk about,
right.
Why am I a Studebaker expert? Because of my good friend Crazy Art told me about these Alvantes who are going to be at the Corvette show last year. I got to talk to these people. 2 of the cars that set the records were sitting there, and a Lark was sitting there. They had a supercharged engine. So the deeper I looked into it, and I should point out, my dad had a 54 Studebaker Commander. That's a 2-door, the hot rod looking car, the most aerodynamic car in 1954.
53 was the best. 54 was almost the same.
And that was the first car I ever drove. So my dad took me to Bow Woods. I'm 14 years old. There's a 3-speed on the column, and he let me drive around the Bow Woods. So I have a fondness for Studebakers. And I've been to the Studebaker Museum now, and I know more about Studebaker than 99.99% of the people in the entire population.
What did Studebaker build first?
The main thing that Studebaker built was the wagon, the farm wagon.
The covered wagons.
No. The farm wagon, the simple farm wagon.
But they were the ones that built the...
They sold in Pioneer Village, because I've been there too in Nebraska. They have a Studebaker freighter. The Studebaker freighter is what you're describing with the canvas, and they have a little note on this saying one company, they named the name of the company, bought 5,000 of those wagons, bought 40,000 oxen, and that's how they ran when people think of the Oregon Trail, did you think of the Oregon Trail as being a freight line? But that's what the Oregon Trail was, and they used oxen because the Indians would not steal oxen. If you had horses, the military could use horses because they could fight off the Indians. But they used oxen to run their freight from wherever in Kansas or wherever in maybe from St. Louis on the Oregon Trail, and they bought all these freighters, and they got an example of that. They don't have one at the museum in South Bend, but they got one in. But their main bread and butter was the farm wagon, and right over here is the Museum of Science Industry, which was left over from the.
Well, the building was left over.
Part of the building, they redid the building, but from the exposition in 1890, the Columbian Exposition in 1893.
That's correct.
Studebaker had a special wagon that they put in here, a farm wagon that they spent like $4,000 putting this wagon together with gold trim and brass parts and all that. And then in 1933, for the next one that they had here.
Next World's Fair.
I think it was
I'm sorry?
Century of Progress.
Right.
33.
Then they had one that they spent $10,000 or $15,000, another farm wagon. So the farm wagon was the
backbone of Studebaker.
Of Studebaker, yes.
The one thing I just real quick want to mention, he mentioned the Museum of Science and Industry, which we can see right now. We're just sitting here. You can't see it obviously from the camera because we don't have anybody on the camera, but it's right over there, right over our shoulders, Museum of Science and Industry. And the thing that I always thought was most interesting about that building was that was one of the first buildings that had AC current. That when they did the Columbian Exposition of 1893, there were two competing entities that were going to provide electricity and lighting. And one of them was Edison who wanted direct current.
Was the Italian.
Tesla. Nikolai Tesla was he actually created Westinghouse. He didn't, but it became Westinghouse. But it was Nikolai Tesla. And Tesla, one man, designed the entire lighting system for the Columbian Exposition, which is like a huge city, and they had to build an entire power generating plant. There was no electrical generating plants or anything like that. And if you want to know why we use alternating current in our homes, there's a reason for it, and it's the reason we use direct current in automobiles and we use alternating current in our homes. And the reason is direct current only works if you're close to where you're going to use it. So in a car, you got the battery, you start it, you use the direct current. But you can't put direct current over long lines unless you've got copper lines 3 feet thick. It's just not practical. You can't push the electricity through it, but you can with alternating current. And that's what Tesla's deal was. He was the one that developed alternating current. And the leftover building, which is what the Museum of Science and Industry is, from the Columbian Exposition of 1893, was one of the first buildings to ever be powered with AC current. And I thought that was a particularly interesting piece of history.
Right.
Anyhow, I'm really cold, guys, and my back, although I'll tell you what, sitting down is nice. Janine, I wanted to make sure you were on the final piece here, because you wanted to tell the folks something again.
Okay, yes. I'd like to remind people that if you're in Facebook, which 99% of the population is.
Yes, 99% of the population are time wasters, don't have real lives, and don't do real things. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, there is a Facebook page for Motorsports Unlimited, and I would definitely invite and encourage everyone to come and join us as we share pictures, share memories, car shows, cruise nights, events like this. I'll be posting pictures that I've taken with my tablet. And also I'd like to let people know that Bill is in process of uploading for viewing on the World Wide Web his episodes, the episodes of Motorsports Unlimited, to his YouTube channel, simply Bill Wildt. But if you put in Motorsports Unlimited, Bill Wildt, you'll come up to his channel and you'll be able to start viewing many of the programs, which, as I say, he's in the process of converting.
And you can always go to YouTube, put in Dan Schmidt, motorcycle racing. I've got about 110 clips. I just put one up yesterday from Lamb's Farm, the ice race in 1997. Finally got around the Sunday race, the Saturday race been up there. Or you can go to Dan Schmidt Politics, and I got about 20-some clips up there.
We won't even let him get started on that.
I have to add, when you get to the YouTube channel for Bill Wildt, Motorsports Unlimited, be sure to subscribe and also click on the little bell. Click on the little bell and you'll receive a notice as to when Bill finishes an upload of an episode. To subscribe simply lets you know how many people are interested in watching your program, continue to watch the program, especially if they have a cable service other than Comcast. But that's why.
And you can watch
Okay,
it on
let
your
me.
smartphone. And you can
Yeah,
watch it.
let me explain what happened. I still have reservations about this because the audience should know that it takes me about 4 hours to upload a 1 hour show. Basically, the procedure goes something like this. It takes about an hour to convert the show from digital format to an MP4 format, which it needs to be on YouTube. So it takes about an hour to do that. And then it takes an hour to upload it. Okay, well, you're saying, well, Bill, that's only 2 hours. Well, the problem is that in order for somebody to find the show, you have to put in what they call the tags. In other words, anything that's on the show, like Janine Lauschat or any Dan Schmidt, anybody that if you don't put that in the tags, no one will ever find the show. So in order to properly upload the show, I first have to watch the show and make notes of everything that was on the show and put that in the thing they call the tags so people can find the thing, and that's really time consuming. So to upload a 1 hour show takes about 4 hours of my time, and I never really bothered with it before because frankly, I don't know if people know this or not, but something like 1.5 billion, that's B with a B, 1.5 billion clips, video clips are uploaded every week. What are the chances of anybody finding it? It sounds nearly impossible to me, so I just didn't think it was worth it. Yes, it flatters your ego to say you're worldwide and you've got audience all. Yeah, fine. Nobody's watching. However, something happened a couple of weeks ago that sort of changed my mind on it a little bit, and I'm watching to see how it goes. I have Comcast. I think I mentioned this before. I have Comcast Xfinity. And they sent a little notice out that it's got a voice command. If you're doing the voice command, cute cat videos YouTube. It comes up with cute cat videos, which it did, and I thought it was cute. And then they said do cute dogs video YouTube, and they emphasized say YouTube at the end, which I did. And so it occurred to me, I said, wait a minute, I wonder if they're getting all the YouTube stuff. Sure enough, I did Motorsports Unlimited YouTube, and a lot of people have posted a lot of their interviews and things like that, and there's a lot of stuff up there. And I said to myself, now wait a minute. Now this makes a little more sense to me. If people can do it that simply just by saying Motorsports Unlimited YouTube and get it through their regular television, they don't have to be computer geeks or anything in order to get it, now all of a sudden it's starting to make a little bit more sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me to be one of 1.5 billion people every week that upload something. It doesn't make any sense, and nobody can ever see it. It's not important to be on television. It's important for people to see it, and that's really been my problem with it. But now that I see that people have a way of seeing it, I'm putting in the effort. Does that make any sense at all?
It makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Bill, let me add, if you knew how to type like I type,
yeah, I can.
You could do the tags much quicker. And I only put Dan
I'm going to try to talk. I'm going to try to talk Janine into it because I am a one finger, one hand. No, just one hand.
One like
and surprisingly enough, it's the middle finger. I don't know why. I paid attention to it. It's not the index. I use the middle finger on my right hand.
This is the way I type.
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
even look.
Okay. I can't type. It's true. I can't type. It takes me forever. When you get an email from me, you ought to feel honored because it's quite an ordeal for me to sit there and peck the thing out. Anyway, this is 2017. This is our coverage of the Rock that we do every year. And what we're essentially doing is tipping our hats to those who created the auto industry. Now, to those of us that are in motorsport, the important thing is this was the start of motorsports in America. In 1895, this was America's first auto race, and it started motorsports. But to other people who are not part of the motorsport community, the most important thing by far is it kicked off the auto industry. And when I say it kicked off the auto industry, I can defend that statement. The fact is, The car that won the race, the Duryea, which was built by the Duryea brothers in their own little shop, not by a corporation, not by big funding, not by banks. It was built by a couple of guys, just like the guys that race at Raceway Park and O'Hara Stadium and Santa Fe Speedway and all the rest. And they were the ones that put the car together. That car that won the race became America's first production automobile 1 year later. So it started the auto industry. And more proof of that is within 5 years after that race, America went from having no automobiles to having over 200 automobile manufacturers within 5 years of that first race. So the America's first auto race was really important, and I was a little concerned this year that we weren't going to be here. You might have heard that they're going to build a presidential library in this area, and I wrote a letter to President Obama, he was still president at the time, about 10 months ago, I suppose, 10, 11 months ago, just explaining that there's an important historical monument here, that if this is going to be part of the area where the presidential library is going to be, to please consider making this a feature of the library. Instead, my concern is it's going to get brushed aside like it's not important, and it is important. But I also understand the library is important, so make it a feature of the library, that this is a historical landmark that becomes part of the landscaping of the library. I think that would be a suitable solution to the problem. I certainly don't want to chase the library away, but I really want these historical landmarks to be respected, and I think it can be done. Now, my concern is I never got a response, and I did send it by email and by snail mail to make sure it got there. So, again, one never knows what seeds you plant, but I certainly tried, and I was afraid this year when we came down that it was going to be all paved over. But that has not been the case so far. So far, we're still here, and with any kind of luck, we'll be here again next week. Janine, anything you want to say before we close for this year? And welcome back, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm happy to be home. There's no place like home.
You know what? You're exactly right. There is every motorcycle trip I've ever taken, and I'm all excited to go wherever I'm going and meet the people and whatever I'm doing. But I'll tell you what, the last few miles coming home, there is no place like home.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, Dan, anything else you want to say? Nothing political.
Well,
or
what I'd like to say, I'd like to thank, because Steve Carson came to the Legends, and Steve Carson was my partner when we ran the Weir National Endurance Series. So another opportunity for me we won 2 national titles because of Steve Carson. Back at 4 and 6, Jimmy Rashid and Ed Hilton, because we could never have raced all those miles, thousands and thousands of miles, without their work. And in 2002, winning 2 championships was we were real lucky, and I'm still pretty proud of it. And anytime I can thank Steve, my partner, because he used to complain a lot about me not writing stuff down and that, but we definitely had a great time, and that was another great era of motorcycle road racing.
All right, Dan, I guess we're done then. Janine, we're done. Yes, everybody done. Everybody said everything you want to say except one more thing. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. As you may know by now, that turned out to be the last television I recorded. What you probably don't know is I had to dramatically edit the first part because the camera didn't record the first several minutes. That's why you saw the On Any Sunday flat track footage to start the interview. The camera started recording when Dan and I were talking about flat track motorcycle racing. I don't know what was missing. Well, I tried. I did my best. But the year before had shown me I don't get around well enough anymore to do this work. I'm pretty stubborn and wanted to give it one more shot, and I thought with Janine's help, perhaps I could make it work. As I looked at this footage, I knew I was kidding myself. I'm not just talking about the erratic performance of the video camera. I'm talking about me. As a matter of fact, what this doesn't show is I spent the next 3 days sleeping on the floor with a heating pad under my back. Sometimes being stubborn just isn't enough. In 2018, I did not even try to bring a camera to the Rock. 2016 and 2017 were embarrassing enough. Of course, I attended, but made no effort to record anything. Once again, I imposed on Janine to take a few pictures. Here are her pictures from the 2018 gathering at the Rock. Again, those pictures were taken by Janine Lauschat at the 2018 Gathering at the Rock. Okay, I think it's time for me to assign program numbers to the two Rock 2017 shows, and as you've just seen, a little bit of Rock 2018 thrown in. This was a lot easier when I was producing a new show every week, but it's not impossible. These two shows are following the airing of Explanation 13, which was MSU number 1419. So, Rock 2017 Part 1 will be MSU number 1420, and Rock 2017 Part 2 and a little bit of 2018 will be numbered MSU number 1421. By the way, the reason it's difficult to assign numbers these days is because it takes me months to complete a show now. It used to take a week, and I'm usually working on more than one at a time. Oh well, I think it's only important to me, but I like to keep things straight. I suppose I should also mention my plans for the Gathering at the Rock 2019. Of course, I plan to be there as I have been every year, but I know it's not the same if I'm not taping. Based on my lack of physical improvement over the past few years, I seriously doubt if I'll be able to record anything. Still, there may be a way, and I am working on it. We'll see. Right now, we're out of time with only enough left to thank John Platania for helping me in the studio on Wednesday nights. Me? I'm Bill Wildt, thanking you for watching, even without the Motorsport Girls. I'm not sure I would. Tune in next week for our continuation of what this has been all about for the past 31 years. See you then.
This program made possible in part by support from ABC Auto Parts, located on Ashland Avenue at 138th Street in Blue Island, Illinois.
Motorsports Unlimited is produced by Bill Wildt, president of the Motorsport Advancement Crusade.
This program made possible in part by support from Jimmy's Red Hots, located on Grant Avenue and Pulaski Road in Chicago.
Motorsports Unlimited was created to raise public consciousness, understanding, and appreciation of the motorsport community and their activities. You can contact us by email at msutv.com or email us directly at msutv@aol.com. We enjoy hearing from our audience and encourage you to let us know what you think. Now, this is not one of our usual next weeks promoting next week's program. This is a reminder that Motorsports Unlimited is now global on YouTube. Simply subscribe to Bill Wildt Motorsports Unlimited on YouTube and watch us anytime.
So that's it, another edition of Motorsports Unlimited and the lovely ladies of motorsports. And be with us next week because we'll have something real exciting. Bill Wildt's going to have the lovely ladies, and just about anything can happen right here on Motorsports Unlimited. Every week at this time, we bring you the best in motorsports. So be seeing ya. Bye-bye. And keep on rocking.